Everyone, let's talk politics. Our JD Durkin is standing by live from Capitol Hill with a very special guest. JD, over to you.
Thank you very much, Corey. Very excited to be joined by Virginia Senator, former VP candidate, Senator Tim Kaine, the great state of Virginia. It's great to have you join us, Senator.
Hey, JD, good to be with you.
All right, so obviously the debate here is health care. We'll get to that in just a second. Let's talk a little news of the day. Earlier this week, you made a few headlines. When it came, you used the T word. You said the Russian collusion story is now a treason investigation.
Not quite. I was close. Okay, I got asked by a CNN reporter, hey, this Donald Trump Jr. meeting with the Russians, is this treason? I was asked directly, and I said, nothing has been proven yet. Okay. I then went on to say something that I think is pretty obvious to Americans, which is this investigation, which started as sort of an obstruction of justice investigation after Comey was fired, has now gotten significantly broader to include a lot of potentially very serious charges. And I use the word potential because the thing's clearly broadening, and it's up to the Director Mueller, the special prosecutor, and the Senate Intel Committee to figure out what's there. I reached no conclusions, but I'm glad there's good investigators.
So out of curiosity, do you think that maybe members of the media took it and maybe spun it the wrong way? Because you did get some pushback for the use of the word.
When they ran a clip, they cut off the first part of my sentence, which, as I said, nothing has been proven yet. They cut that off. I was asked the direct question, and I said nothing's been proven yet. But look, this is obviously, if the issue that's being investigated following this last revelation is, did somebody coordinate with a foreign adversary? Russia, the head of our Joint Chiefs of Staff, says it's the most significant nation-state adversary we have. Did you coordinate with a foreign adversary to attack the basics of American democracy? It doesn't get more serious than that.
All right, last question regarding the Trump administration here. Your Senate colleague Ron Wyden said regarding the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, said that Mr. Kushner, quote, should not be involved now in handling sensitive security matters and materials. I think the senator from Connecticut today even wondered why Jared Kushner still has a job in the White House. Senator, are you prepared at any point soon to also call for Jared Kushner to lose his security clearance?
I am not at that point yet, but I saw an odd thing yesterday where the White House was equivocating about whether or not he had a security clearance. So, look, I think the right thing is let these investigations go forward. You've got the special prosecutor doing a criminal investigation. Sure, there'll be criminal charges, but you also have the Senate Intel Committee, and they're doing a different one. What happened so we can protect our system? And clearly, if there is information that gets proven about Jared Kushner that suggests you shouldn't have a security clearance, no, it should be taken away.
Okay, great. Let's pivot now and talk about health care. The newest iteration of the Republicans' effort to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act is due out within the next few hours. Senator, do you have any idea what's going to be in this bill?
Well, I hear it's going to be much like versions 4,
you have
3,
Republican
2,
sources
and 1.
telling you? Sure.
Yes, it's going to be very similar to what we saw with the 2 House versions and the Senate versions. You know, the interesting thing, though, about the Senate version, in one way, it went much farther than the House in going after Medicaid. The House proposed to phase out and eliminate the Medicaid expansion that the Affordable Care Act did. But the Senate goes farther, not only doing that, but going after the core Medicaid program. In Virginia, between 50 and 60% of Medicaid recipients are children, 20% people with disabilities, 10 to 15% are parents and grandparents in nursing homes. And so when you go after Medicaid, that's who you're going after, and that's one of the reasons why the calls into my office about the Senate plan are running 98-2 against.
98% against the bill.
In the first 18 days after it came out, from June 22 to July 10, we had more than 11,000 calls, letters, and emails, and it was 98% oppose this, don't do this, don't take our health care, and only 2% who supported it.
I'm glad you're focusing on Medicaid here, because like you said, 60% or so, I think according to 2015 statistics, Medicaid recipients are children. What are the feedback from some of the parents of the children specifically? What's really the focus of your constituents in Virginia?
We were chatting about this. I had a roundtable on Monday with 5 families where there was a parent and a disabled child. And it was interesting. 4 of these families had private insurance because of the job of the mom or dad. 1 had TRICARE because the dad worked with the military, but they all rely on Medicaid because private insurance won't pay for a wheelchair so their kid can go to school. Private insurance won't pay for the ventilator that will enable their child to breathe. They are petrified about a Senate bill that makes these cuts to Medicaid. And they're also struck by this fact, JD, which is a tough one. The Senate bill would, over the next 10 years, take nearly $800 billion out of Medicaid and also hand about an $800 billion tax break, largely to wealthy people and individuals. It's really not even a health care bill in some ways. It's a tax cut bill financed by slashing Medicaid to the vulnerable,
Sure.
to kids, to seniors, to folks with disabilities. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why the outcry is so significant.
Now, this health care bill does have an open amendment process, and a lot of more conservative Senators Lee and Cruz of Utah and Texas specifically are looking to use that open amendment process perhaps to jam through some of their concerns. Yeah. Does that really give you a cause for concern specifically that it is open amendment and there is room for negotiation, it seems like, on the other side of the aisle?
Well, let me tell you, that it's not really fair to say it's an open amendment process. If you wanted to have an amendment process, what you do is what we haven't done. Let the committee have a hearing. I'm on the Health Committee, Health, Education, Labor, Pension. We have a hearing today. We have hearings all the time. But there's only one taboo topic. We're not allowed to have a hearing about health care. There's the Finance Committee that does Medicaid, Medicare. They've not been able to have a hearing about this. And the Republican majority is saying they want to put it on the floor with no committee hearings. At committee hearings, you get amendments, but more importantly, you get the public coming up and saying, I like this, I don't like this, fix that. When we get it to the floor, there will be the allowance of amendments, but get this, JD, on the floor, the amendments are you get 1 minute to explain your amendment, and somebody gets 1 minute to counter it, and then you have to vote.
Sure.
That's no way to deal with health care. It's the most important expenditure anybody ever makes in their life. It's 1/6 of the American economy. Why don't we let the Health Committee and the Finance Committee do what the Senate's supposed to do, hear from the public, and then take the time to get this right rather than jam it through?
Well, I'm curious from the perspective of a Democrat like yourself, when you look at how split the Republican conference is specifically over this, does that give you some optimism that this really isn't going to go much of anywhere?
It is. It's close right now, but I think the right answer, if I put myself in Republican shoes, what would the right answer? Why wouldn't the right answer be, this is big, tough, and complicated. Let the Health Committee and let the Finance Committee do their job and bring us a better product. And then when we're voting on it, it's not a choice between throwing 20 million people off insurance or voting against the repeal of Obamacare. Let's make it a good bill, not a Democratic bill, not a Republican bill, but more of a bill that has some bipartisan appeal. And we can do that if we let the committees do their job and we listen to the public.
I'm curious, Senator, your perspective. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has somewhat put this under a veil of secrecy. They want to reveal it kind of last minute, perhaps to avoid it being openly criticized. What is your response when you see the tactics from Mitch McConnell?
It makes me real nervous because, look, you're going to hear from the CBO next week what this new version has in it, and a whole lot of people are going to be hurt. But when you try to do it fast, there's some unintended consequences, and there's always unintended consequences. But you minimize those if you have open discussion. And again, the secrecy, it's keeping the Democrats out, even those of us who are on the right committees, but more important, it's keeping the public out. And that causes grave worry. These parents I met with the other days, I mean, it was a tear-inducing event. When you talk to these parents who 24/7, they are working so hard for the well-being of their kids, and then they're being told these massive Medicaid cuts are coming down, why frighten them? Why jam something through that'll hurt them? Let's spend our time trying to debate and make the improvements we can that will help them, not hurt them.
Final question for you here, Senator. If this does in fact fail, are you committed to some form of bipartisan cooperation to try and improve the key elements of Obamacare that, by your own admission, perhaps could use improvement?
There's never been a bill that couldn't be improved. I learned when I was governor of Virginia, every piece of legislation that got to my desk that I had to sign or veto, one year there were 1,100 bills that got to my desk, and I realized 800 of them were amendments to existing laws, and only a small percentage were new. What we do when we legislate is we improve existing laws. I have a bill in right now that would create a reinsurance provision, which is like a backstop against high-cost claims so that everybody else can have their premiums lower. This was part of Obamacare for the first 3 years, and it kept premiums down. It then expired. But reinsurance, we use it in Medicare Part D. We use it in flood insurance. We use it in crop insurance. It's well accepted. It has Republican support in all these other programs. If we did that in the Affordable Care Act, we would drop premiums. So I have an idea that I think will help, and I know some Republican colleagues have some bills on the table too that they think will do a good job, and I see some features in those bills that I like. Let's let the Senate be the Senate and do a normal process where we have our committees hear from the public and then find improvements.
It's an incredibly crucial day in this fight. Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, thank you very much for taking the time and joining us.
Glad
Corey, I'll toss it back to you on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.